Hey, everybody. We want to do everything possible with this campaign to magnify the voices that we think are the most important. And obviously, the voices of labor. It's a kind of new labor, a real resurgence of the labor movement that's going on in the United States today. But as this resurgence occurs, it also goes along with a rethinking of why labor is so important. And so, in issue after issue, whether it has to do with Amazon, whether it has to do with Starbucks, and tonight, as you'll hear, whether it has to do with university grad students. The issue here, of course, has to do with money and power that is gained by a few at the expense of the many, and the suffering that this causes, and the kind of economic oppression of sorts that this causes. So I think a lot of people are figuring all this out, coming to understand it, and nothing explains all this to us like hearing actual people, their stories, and that give us a deeper understanding of what all this means in human terms. So I welcome my guests here tonight, all of whom are grad students at the University of Michigan, who can tell you much better than I can exactly what's going on there, what's been going on, what their strike is about, why they're doing it. So welcome to all of you. Let's begin with you, Amir Fleischman. What is your role in all this? And give us a little overview of what the strike is about.
Yeah, sure. I am chair of the publicity committee at GEO, and I'm a PhD candidate in the political science department and a graduate student instructor at the University of Michigan. So we've been on strike for over 3 weeks now. We're fighting for a whole bunch of different issues, but they can really be summarized in two groups, affordability and dignity in the workplace. So for affordability, we're fighting for a living wage and additional support for those who need it, like parents, international students, and disabled workers. We're fighting for better sexual harassment protections. We're fighting for a police alternative on campus. And we're fighting for better gender-affirming care.
So let's go back a little bit, because I think a lot of us, when we think of grad students who work at the universities, we've kind of had this idea of what is the work that you do there exactly? What has it been, and why have things changed in such a way that people such as yourself are actually making a stand for better conditions?
Yeah, so as graduate students, we have kind of three different roles that mirror what professors do. So we do research, we teach undergraduates, so around 3 in 10 instructors at the University of Michigan are graduate students. And we do service work that helps the university, doing things like mentoring students, organizing conferences, and stuff like that. So while faculty get paid for all three of those things, we only get paid for teaching. And that's kind of at the root of the problem, that they pay us part-time wages, even though we're working full-time and then some. So as a result of this, the gap between our salary and the cost of living in Ann Arbor has tripled over the past 3 years. And what we're asking for is for the university to close that gap and pay us enough to live in the city where we work.
Now, is the work that you're doing for the university work that you're doing for your own financial purposes, or is this demanded of grad students?
So it depends a little bit on how you're funded. But for many of us, it wouldn't be possible to be doing a PhD or a master's degree without the funding that comes with teaching. So almost all PhD programs are fully funded. It's very rare that you're paying tuition or taking out a loan to do a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the vast majority of us wouldn't even consider it if that was the case. So teaching is one of the ways that they get us this funding. And that's the contract we're negotiating is over our teaching positions.
So if this was 10 years ago, would it have been that the problem was not so severe economically for someone like yourself, or would it have been that there was just this general acceptance that this is just how it is for grad students?
So I think in some senses, things wouldn't have been as bad. At Michigan, we're fortunate insofar as we have one of the oldest grad worker unions in the country. So
Oh.
workers here have had the protection of the union for 50 years at this point. And 10 years ago, the gap between salaries and cost of living wasn't as big. But what we're seeing now is that across the country, grad students are getting fed up with these working conditions, not getting paid very much money, having to put our lives on hold while our friends who didn't pursue graduate degrees are already in the workforce. And that's why we're seeing a wave of unionization at places like Harvard, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and a wave of grad strikes. We saw the University of California, recently Rutgers, Temple University, NYU, Columbia. It's a growing list. So I think, like workers across the country, we're feeling the cost of living squeeze and we're demanding more.
So, Amir, can you tell me what the endowment is at the University of Michigan?
Yes, the endowment is over $17 billion, of which more than half is unreserved, so can be spent on anything that the university wants.
Okay, can you give me an idea of the kind of money that the grad workers such as yourselves are making?
We make currently around $24,000 a year, and we're asking for a raise to $38,000 a year. And to fund that raise would only cost around $33 million per year. The university runs a budget surplus of over $400 million. So we're talking about not even 10% of the profit that the university makes.
Where does most of the money that the university gets, where does that money come from?
It comes from a mix of tuition and private donations, and a very small percentage of it funding from the state, because the University of Michigan is a public university.
About how long ago was it that you and others or others began to talk to the university about what you feel is the sort of economic injustice of the fact that you're paid so low? How long ago did you start talking to the university about this?
We started bargaining in November. And we've been in talks ever since. Negotiations are still going on, and we presented our whole platform on the very first day.
When you presented your platform, how was it greeted?
With a bit of skepticism. I think it took them a pretty long time to give us our first counterproposal. We were actually stuck negotiating with them over really trivial things like whether our members could be in the room to watch negotiations for months. And they were really held up over this. They wanted closed negotiations that weren't transparent and weren't democratic. Our members said no, they really wanted to be in the room to participate in this process and to see how the university was treating our proposals. And that ate up a lot of time, which was really frustrating for us.
So when you presented the proposal, just on a human level, given the fact that we're talking about near starvation wages and people who are also going to school to get a PhD and working, what was just on the human level? Was there some acknowledgement that it's a reasonable request that you're making?
Yeah, I wish I could say yes, but when they gave us their first counter on salary, they offered us something that was still below the rate of inflation. And they actually admitted that they didn't even consider the cost of living when coming up with that number.
You know, it's such an interesting thing because you think you are their grad students. You're really the crown jewel of the university in many ways. You'd think that everything possible to set you up to thrive in your lives would be their goal. But that's not what you encountered, correct?
Yeah, it's really quite strange because I know in my department, political science, they're having trouble recruiting grad students because the University of Michigan offers such low wages compared to other grad programs.
Wow. So, Jared, what's your story?
I am a grad student in sociology and public policy, and I'm currently president of GEO. Throughout this campaign, I've talked to so many grad students about their current working and living conditions, and it's been really heartbreaking how many folks are doing things like selling their plasma to make ends meet, skipping meals to make ends meet, rationing medications. And this is at one of the wealthiest public institutions in the country, with as Amir said, over $17 billion in its endowment. So it's really baffling that the university would be fighting us so hard that we would be forced to strike for 4 weeks now with no end in sight because we're not getting any reasonable offers from the university on our salary.
Once again, I keep going back to this human element. For you're graduating at a very prestigious university in very prestigious fields, and you going out into the world and making names for yourselves would make the university shine. You're an alum, University of Michigan, selling your plasma? When you say this to someone in that situation, what do they say to you?
At the bargaining table, they don't say much, unfortunately. They
Are they the
don't.
trustees of the university? Are they lawyers? Or are they negotiators that are hired by the university? Who are they?
The folks sitting across the table from us are from human resources, lawyers in a lot of cases, as well as some professors who work at the university. And over the course of the past 4 or 5 months, they've heard some really heart-wrenching stories from grad workers who have made themselves quite vulnerable in order to try and explain what's happening on the in the day-to-day lives of grad workers. And, repeatedly, the human resources team thanks us for sharing the stories, but then gives us offers that shows that they don't care about what they've just heard. In terms of the trustees of the university, we talked with them earlier this year and explained our proposals for a living wage and for safe and dignified working conditions. And they said that they were reasonable demands, and in some case, they called them no-brainers, what we were suggesting. And now that we've actually shown that we're serious about winning them, we're getting a very different response from the university. And the Regents just released a statement the other day saying that they think that a living wage is unreasonable.
So when they first said that it was a no-brainer, were you thinking, okay, we're in active negotiations, we're going to get somewhere, and then they just dragged it out so long that you went on strike? Is that what happened?
Yeah, we were hopeful, especially because the university just brought in a new president, President Santa Ono, whose entire ethos is to listen to students, to listen to people on campus, and take care of them with an emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion. That is an emphasis on the people who are most marginalized on campus. So it's very confusing what's been happening at the bargaining table week after week as we come in with proposals that are well researched based on the lived experiences of grad workers. To have them simply say no over and over without giving any explanation of why is just baffling. And that's still where we're at after 4 weeks of strike.
Is it reasonable to assume that the new president of the university, is driving this car and making this decision to be such a strong Stonewall?
I wish I could tell you an answer to that question. We have tried to approach President Ono a number of times. He consistently avoids interacting with grad workers. In fact, just the other day, when grad workers tried to talk to him after the university had docked their pay for the month of April, because we're on strike,
Did you?
some grad workers approached
Isn't that
some
illegal? Isn't it illegal to
well,
pay for being on strike?
they have done it in a fairly haphazard way. We're still trying to understand who they've docked pay from and why. They don't seem to have much evidence on who has been working and who is not. So we are going to fight back against this for our members. But these members, they just saw President Ono having dinner in a restaurant and decided to try and talk to him about their pay being docked. And he ended up calling the campus police on them, and 2 of them were detained. So it's really shocking and unfortunate the way the university has been treating its own workers.
How many of you are there who are part of this effort? First of all, how many are part of the union? First of all, how many grad workers are there at the university? How many?
There are many thousands of grad students. At any given time, the number of grad students who are teaching is about 2,100 to 2,300.
And how many of those are part of the union?
About 2/3 of them, just shy of 2/3, are members of the union because we're in a right-to-work state. So people can opt out of union membership.
But wait, wasn't that just repealed in Michigan?
It was, but unfortunately, due to the Janus Supreme Court decision, we are public employees, and the Janus decision made right to work
Mm-hmm.
the law of the land nationwide for public employees. So we're still right to
Mm-hmm.
work here.
Yeah, that's Ronald Reagan. That's the. I'm so old. I remember the airport controllers. Yeah. Thank you. So what word would you use to describe everything at the moment, the whole state of things at the moment? What word? If I had to, you could use 3 words, but if you could do one word, if you had it, what would it be? Where are things right now?
That's a good question. I would say disappointing, for one thing. We are teachers, so we want to be in the classroom with our students. It's very difficult for graduate student instructors to be on strike this long. The only reason we are doing it is because the current working conditions are just not possible to live with. Um, and so many of our undergrads understand that. We've had incredible support from undergraduate students in this campaign and in this strike.
What
But
about
it's
any
really
professors?
disappointing that it's gotten to this point.
What
Yeah,
about the full, full professors? Are you getting support from that part of the population at the university?
we have gotten a lot of support from professors who have written statements saying that the administration is not doing right by its grad workers. When we went on strike, the day after we started, the university went to the courts to ask for an injunction to force us back to work and take the status quo. And a lot of faculty were outraged by that. There was a big open letter out of the law school saying how that was inappropriate. We fought the university in court and we won. They did not get an injunction against us, and but the university has not given up. At this point, we are in final exams, and those can't be graded without graduate student instructors. The university is trying to just push through without us by telling faculty that they should issue grades instead of us, even though the faculty have not been in the classroom, have not been doing these assignments, have not been talking to these students the way that graduate student instructors do. And a lot of faculty have seen that that's really a bridge too far, that the administration is willing to infringe on academic freedom, infringe on
Mhm.
pedagogical practice, all just to keep from paying us a living wage.
And is this also imperiling your own personal PhD track?
Yes, yeah. Um, you know, I've been at this institution a number of years, and I come from a place of a lot of privilege, so I'm fine. But it's been so difficult to just watch so many other grad students, grad workers struggle year after year, and so many times blame themselves for what's happening to them, struggling with undiagnosed ADHD, for instance, which so many grad students are struggling with, which we're trying to get the university to more clearly give access to diagnostics and testing and coverage. Um, Folks who are dealing with, not being able to pay the rent, being stressed about buying groceries. These are the things that drive people to drop out of grad school. And the university has made a very public commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion to make sure that everyone is able to get through undergrad and grad school. And it's just not living up to its values. It's very confusing.
No. Words like that have become performative. The system has figured out that it helps to use those words. It helps to act like you care, to talk like you care. Wow.
That's right.
Caroline, what about you? What brings you here? What's your story?
Sure, yeah. I'm Caroline. I'm actually a master's degree student, unlike Jared and Amir. I'm doing a dual master's in public policy and environmental science, and I am a member of the bargaining team for GEO.
And what is the situation that differentiates someone who is or is there any differentiation between a grad worker who's a master's student versus a grad student who is a
There
PhD
are
student?
some differences. for example, master's students have to, it's much more competitive for master's students to get a teaching position because they are reserved for PhD students primarily. But as more and more PhD students get fellowships, then the remaining positions are open for master's students. But our working conditions are the same. And so we're all very united in terms of the dignity that we're fighting for in the classroom. And in some ways, the university has tried to divide us against each other. For example, by offering a summer funding package that's only available to PhD students and leaves master's students out. But grad workers are overall completely united in fighting for a fair contract for all of us.
You said that you were on the bargaining committee. Does that mean that you were one of the people who's actually in the room, literally at the table, speaking to the negotiators? How many of them are you?
I'm in the room at the table with the negotiators. I think, how many of us are there? Are there 10 of us? There's around 10 of us.
How many sessions with the negotiators have you had?
I've lost count at this point. We were meeting every week, starting in mid-November, but then in the last few weeks, we've been meeting 3 or more times a week. So it's in the number is in the 20s by now.
Well, wait a minute. So they're still meeting with you even though the strike has begun?
Yes.
So did they think? I'm sorry, go on.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Did they actually believe that you guys were going to strike, or did they think you wouldn't do it?
You know, I really can't fathom what the university leaders are thinking. But the bottom line is we have not given up at the negotiating table. Us being on strike doesn't mean that we're not continuing to negotiate in good faith. We are still there for every session and trying our best to show why our proposals are necessary and reasonable.
And what are you? Do you feel that you're inching any closer to some level of just negotiation here?
Inching is probably the right word. The pace has been painstakingly slow. As my colleagues mentioned, the university's MO is to take one of our proposals, mark through all of it, and just return it completely marked through in red as a blanket no. And then we have to dig for the answers why and find out what their real concerns are. And then we go back to our teams and completely rewrite it to try and accommodate whatever concerns they've expressed. And then the cycle continues with another blanket no. So it has indeed been painstakingly inching forward.
Has there been much media coverage of the strike and what's happening there?
Yes, we've gotten a lot of really wonderful media coverage. I think, especially as the strike goes on, more and more people are becoming aware of what we're doing, what we're fighting for. And we had an article in The Guardian recently that mentioned our fight. And so the media coverage is continuing to grow, and we're grateful for that because we believe this is a fight that more people should know about, and people can support us in all kinds of ways.
Are people who are officials at the university also speaking to the press about this?
I'm sure they are. To be honest, I personally haven't been reading their statements. I've learned that I really can't trust what they say, in their statements and in the media. Sometimes we look at their press releases and have to create counters of our own to counter actual misinformation that they put out. But I'm honestly way more focused on just the fight in front of me and being at the bargaining table.
I understand. Amir and Jared, can you give me any idea the official line that the university is presenting to the media to try to justify their behavior?
Yeah, I can respond to this. There are a couple things that have been really frustrating for me to hear from the university that they like to repeat over and over again. The first is that we haven't moved from our initial compensation proposal of a living wage of $38,000 a year. We've made significant movement in a whole bunch of areas, and we just spent a lot of work restructuring our compensation proposal to reduce the overall cost it would have to the university. And we passed that across last week. The university, in fact, hasn't moved from their initial offer since the start of the strike. They're still offering us a so-called raise that's around $100 a month. That's below the rate of inflation, right? So it's an effective pay cut. And meanwhile, the provost got something like, a $10,000, way more than that, like a $20,000 raise, $60,000 raise last year. The president of the university got something like a $100,000 raise last year. So we're really, the people who are offering us $100 a month are themselves getting humongous raises that are really unfathomable to us. The other piece of misinformation that the university has been putting out constantly is that we're refusing to bargain with them as much as they want to. They say that they want to bargain every day, the full day, and that we're refusing to do that. Well, the state of Michigan has appointed a mediator to come to these negotiating sessions, and the mediator is saying that it would be a waste of time to negotiate every day. Instead, we should negotiate every other day, and that's exactly what we've been doing.
Are they just planning to exhaust you and assume you'll just give up?
That's what it seems like, but I don't think that's going to work based on the conversations I've had with our members.
How can the public help you?
Well, one way they could help us is by donating to our strike fund. And you can go to... Sorry?
Please. Yeah, please go. I want the address.
You can go to givebutter.com/GEO strike fund.
Butter or give bitter? What did you say?
Give butter, like the dairy product. Butter.
Wait, yeah. I'm confused. We're hearing it. Tell me again. Give butter, like the food?
Yeah.
Butter?
Yeah, like the food, exactly.
Givebutter.com/GEO
strike fund. Yeah, and I can tell you that GEO strike fund. And of course, I'd be happy to... Okay,
Lauren, I'm writing this down and you'll have to put this... Okay, givebutter.com/GEO strike fund.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, not exactly an easy URL, but we'll write it down. Okay, people can give money. How much money? And you're raising this money to compensate for those who are having their pay docked, right?
Exactly, yeah. And, since they announced that they were withholding pay on Thursday, we've seen a tremendous outpouring of support. And our strike fund has more than doubled in that time. So it's been really incredible to see the solidarity, coming from across the country and indeed around the world.
So my final questions are there other grad student workers unions doing the same thing right now?
Yes, absolutely. We saw, I think just a couple of weeks ago, grad workers at Rutgers went on strike, also for a living wage. Earlier this year or late last year, the entire University of California system, grad workers went on strike in what was the biggest higher ed strike ever. We're talking about tens of thousands of workers going on strike at once, which has been really incredible to see.
I'm just trying to figure out even the mentality here, because I guess what they're saying to themselves is, you're so lucky to be getting a PhD at this prestigious school, and you're going to make so much money when you get out of here. You should be thanking us. And so for you to have to struggle now, I mean, is that the kind of thinking that's going on here, do you think? And that justifies this?
Pretty much. But of course, that's totally divorced from the reality of the academic job market. It's very difficult to become a professor. More and more, these positions are adjunct positions, which are very unstable, get paid only slightly more than what we get paid now. So it's not a guarantee that somebody comes out with a PhD and is getting a really stable tenure track 6-figure job. Some of us are going to go into these adjunct positions, and the same administrators who are telling us that we don't deserve a living wage are telling these adjuncts, these lecturers, that they don't deserve a good salary or a stable job either.
It's unbelievable. It really is just the generalized crisis of capitalism today. It's just sociopathic because even what you're asking for, this is not a high salary here. What even you're asking for, your high price. Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And they think we're students and that this is a prelude to our life. But as Jared likes to say, it's not a prelude. This is our life, right? Many of us are in our 30s. Many of us have children. Uh, Many of us
How
already
old are
have
you?
postgraduate degrees.
What are your
I'm
circumstances? Are you married? Do you have children?
Me personally, no, I'm 29. But I
Okay.
know many of my colleagues who do have children. I worked closely with our parents' caucus to develop our childcare demands. Um,
And also, it would be affecting your consideration of what was possible for you.
mm.
Uh, Caroline, do you have children? Are you?
I don't have children. I am in my 30. I think the our colleagues with children are less likely to take media interviews like this. But as Amir said, many of us do have families of our own, and I'm in my
Uh,
30s. Jared's is older than I am, and so
Yeah, I think the point you made is that you're already living your life. Life is not on hold for you. This is your life, and you're absolutely correct. Well, I'm really horrified by your story, as I know that many people are. And what I keep going to in my mind is, what do they think they're supposed to be doing with that $17 billion? That's the part that I can't figure out. It should be this, and this is how I feel about so much of public policy and this crisis, really this economic crisis in this country is it's an economics of mean-spiritedness. Money should be used to support life, to support people thriving. That's what that endowment, it would seem to me, should be for. If it's not to help you guys go out into the world and be all that you can be, what is the point of a university? And like I said, you should be considered the crown jewels. So I'm very sorry that you're going through what you're going through. I know that the people who are listening to us right now are moved. I hope you get some donations, and I will continue to speak about your situation in my own in my campaign, in illuminating whatever I can. What is a resurgence of labor for the worst of reasons, and that's a real desperation on the part of people in the richest country in the world. And as you said, in such a rich institution. But I hope you said that that many people at school, your professors and students and people who read about you in Michigan are moved by your story. And I know that whoever's listening to us right now will be moved by your story as well. And I wish you the best. And if you ever feel that there's anything more you want to talk about and you feel that this podcast would be helpful for you, then please call me anytime, because I'm more than glad to promote your story. And I hope there will be a quick resolution. I hope that there will be a change of heart on the part of people who are entrusted with the good of the university. This is not a moral good. This is not a social good. This is just absurd. And if any of them are listening, I hope they hear me. Not that they would be surprised that I think so, but I'll take this opportunity to tell them so. So I wish you all the very best. Do any of you have any closing lines, closing thoughts that you'd like to share with people before we go?
If I may, Marianne, I really appreciate your support and helping to get our message out there. I, as we've talked about here, it is really shocking the way that the University of Michigan is operating like any other corporation. They did it with the nurses who were over in the Michigan Medicine Hospital last year. They did it with librarians last year. They're doing it to us now. And I will say that in addition to it being really difficult for so many workers on this campus, it has also been amazing to watch workers come together and fight together so hard to express care for each other. A lot of folks can't miss a paycheck, but a lot of folks are missing a paycheck because they care about each other and they know that this campus can be better. So yeah, if folks can support, that would be great. An easier way to get to our strike fund might be just to go to our website, which is geo3550.org.
You're not making it exactly easy with any of those names. But tell me again, GEO 35. What was it? 3550.
Yes.
GEO 3550. None of you are majoring in copy editing. That's for sure. And then it's .com.
.org.
.com. .org. Okay. All my very best to you. Keep at it. And I know that no matter what happens here, you're going to have brilliant careers and you're going to have brilliant stories. And this will help inform you. And when you're off in the world doing brilliant work, you won't forget this and you will have more compassion for people finding themselves in the situation that you find yourselves in now. All my very best to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.